Hello, I am Scott Herbst, and you are listening to, I'm the founder of Six Flex Training and Consulting, and you are watching and listening to, The Flex, show where we have conversations with people who are expressing leadership with the intention that it open access to you expressing yours. Really excited to have Tim Ariza here today. Tim is the Assistant Director of Adult Behavioral Services at Laradon, and they serve all the needs of children's and adults with disabilities. He's also the founder of the behavioral consulting company 7, which operates out of Colorado. I don't know if it'll come out. Tim and I go way back. So excited to have him here to actually hear the story of his leadership journey. Where I always love to start things is to keep the introduction short. Turn it over to our guests. Tim, welcome.
Thank you for having me. Yes, we do go way back.
My pleasure. So I'm going to start where I always start, which is to say I love to hear our stories from our guests where you think it's important to start. So starting where you think it's important, tell us about your leadership journey.
Sure. Actual start, it's more like a shaping process more than anything, but obviously we met. You were a professor at my graduate school. I had recently moved from Florida in West Palm Beach, where I studied undergrad psychology. And with an undergrad in psychology, you don't get to do that much. So you need to kind of go to grad school. And I didn't know quite what I wanted to study, what specifics. I kind of was more leaning towards counseling. Then my sister-in-law now wasn't at the time. She was doing behavioral therapy for individuals with autism, and she was telling me all about the work that they did. And I liked how analytical it was because I minored in philosophy. So if it's clear, concise, parsimonious, I'm kind of into it. And that was an area that I was like, okay, maybe this is what I'll do. So I searched certain programs, but I wanted it broad enough. And at the time, the Chicago school was offering a degree in clinical psychology with a specialization in that. So I'm like, all right, so it's still broad enough that I can do stuff. So I went there. And when I went there, I quickly learned that I was one of 2 males, the only one that graduated, which is fine. And everyone was really into autism. And the background and reading about applied behavior analysis, I was like, well, this says it's like applicable to everything. But yet everybody's working in clinics or in-home therapy, which made it very difficult in grad school because most of your internships were in the locations of people with autism. I remember, rest in peace, Murbitz, but he got mad at me because I went off the list. I was like, all these things are related to a field that I don't really want to go into. So I was looking into more like counseling work. Would somebody offer me an internship? Really, the closest thing I could find that was on the list was at a school. So I worked mostly with social emotional kids with social emotional disorders that were in one classroom, really working on really token economies more than anything. And from there, I met a teacher, Dominic, who was great. But the whole time, just like, how kind of am I gonna be able to kind of escape this IDD world? Maybe I can, maybe I can't.
IDD, individual.
Yes, with that's intellectual and developmental disabilities, yeah. IDD. So I stumbled upon one of your courses, which was relational frame theory. And I was like, it was an elective at the time. I was like, I'm gonna take this. And then I also took a course. I'm a trained divorce mediator, and I got that at the Chicago school, and I've mediated exactly one divorce. But I was just trying again to get as much experience as I could, see where this science was applicable to other areas, see if I could get positions. But relational frame theory, I was like, okay, there's definitely a little more here. And from there, you taught an advanced course that was basically ACT, and I was like, so thankful that I was like, okay,
and ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy.
Yeah. Right. So the pioneer there obviously is Steve Hayes. And those two kind of correspond, relational frame theory and ACT. There's a bridge across, but you can certainly study one, not necessarily the other, because there's a lot of licensed professional counselors out there practicing ACT that probably don't know much about mutual entailment.
Yeah, can I ask you a question? This is
Yeah,
really interesting to me. And of course, thrilling to me because I love to hear that my course has made a difference. But we are getting a little jargony. I want to make sure people know what we're talking about.
for sure.
So I'm going to slow down and just say relational frame theory is a way that looks at language and speaking, but actually not just speaking, but also listening and understanding as behaviors,
Yeah,
and really identifies the component behaviors of what makes language work. So that's relational frame theory, and then ACT is acceptance and commitment therapy, and it's basically, well, I don't want to get into explaining ACT, but I'm curious. So these are, relational frame theory is kind of this esoteric thing that, even within our field, I don't know how many more people understand it, but not many people understood it then, right?
no,
Um, and ACT is really designed as a psychotherapy, although it's like the applications have gone uh, much beyond that now.
yeah,
Um, I'm curious, forgive me if you were going to get there, how this connects to leadership for you.
oh yeah. So I use it all the time now in leadership because I deal with adults, and I sadly think, and the science of applied behavior analysis is great. It's awesome, but it is very skewed and niche in one area. And now I would say it's almost skewing in more closer to early intervention, which is fine. But I think it's powerful there. But where people struggled is when you have a client who probably has, and I'm going to be mentalistic, some metacognition, can think about what they did from the past, think about whether, evaluate their behavior, whether that was good, why they did it, so on and so forth. You see that a lot of clinicians within our field, board certified behavior analysts, start to struggle with those clients. But those are the clients that intrigue me the most, against, because they're, we're able to almost essentially look at, similar to ACT, values and stuff like that, that motivate somebody over these contingency management things. If you do this, then this happens, or you said a word, therefore you get that item, which again is super important. But then how does this actually apply to more adults? And I think those two were the manner in which that occurs. And it's not that there aren't other formulations of somebody, using applied behavior analysis very stringently in a way that is helpful in their leadership. But I think those other two things really helped me when I certainly went into a management role, which happens very quickly once you get out of school, you get licensed. And you don't get a ton of, unless you sought it out, a ton of information on how to supervise people.
Yeah, it's kind of like, okay, be a clin or be a direct worker, be a direct worker, be a direct worker. Okay, cool. Now go manage you.
Yeah, go
Yeah.
manage these. And usually they're great people. They're 20 something year olds who want to help out and are either between jobs, just graduated, that type of thing. There's inner workings and dynamics within those. But then they're like, all right, now supervise these people. And you're like, whoa, huh? That's fast. I don't know quite what to do. But some of those informations, relational frame theory and ACT, have helped me understand, what people are motivated by. And then also what they tie up in their relational frames as they move forward, why they do what they do, how do I, as like a supervisor, occur to them. Those are super important things. And
Yeah.
go
Hey,
ahead.
so we're not getting too jargony.
Yeah,
Can you give me an example of that and how that
for
might
sure.
play out in a management and leadership situation?
Absolutely.
Specifically, I'm talking about, you said people getting tied up in their own relational frames,
So
right?
one of the first, I guess, professional gigs, again, you get thrown into management stuff, is there was a case manager, not necessarily somebody I directly supervised, but in the hierarchy of, your work chart stuff, they're gonna be below you. So I have to interact with these individuals. And sometimes you can say things that these individuals have never heard of. They don't quite get why we're doing it or what we're doing it. So then whenever you come into a situation or a meeting where you're going to literally say something that directs us into maybe not a totally new path, but for instance, this was at an adult day program where I was like, at this adult day program, I just see a lot of nothing going on
Yeah.
and sadly adult babysitting. But then
Yeah.
we classify ourselves as an adult training program. So where's the training? And I remember butting heads at first where the person's like, well, is this a place where they can come and have fun? And I'm like, dude, I'm all about fun. So I'm not anti-fun, which clearly demonstrates that person right away that training is not fun because that
Yes.
person immediately takes it as like, whoa, no, we're supposed to have fun. Training's not fun. No, that's not the point. Training can totally be fun, but we're looking at training more adaptive skills to make somebody more independent. That way they can have an access to me more fun. But
And that just I want to pause.
yeah, yeah,
That what you pointed to would be a relational frame, right?
exactly. Right.
So that, oh, there's nothing inherently fun or not fun about training. But if I come into and just hear the word training and immediately I'm like, well, that's no fun. That's a relational frame,
Yeah,
right?
precisely.
Okay,
And that's
cool.
what was occurring. And it probably occurred a few times where finally I was like, oh, I get kind of what's happening here. So I just had a meeting with those two case managers and I was like, hey, man, like, I'm trying to have a cool job. You're trying to have a cool job. We're both here to help people. So finding common ground of what we're actually here to do. And then look at right now, currently, if I come into a meeting or we're having a meeting, what are kind of the private events? Like what's happening in your head going into that meeting? Are you already on defense? Like I'm going to tell you something that you don't want to do. And I learned very quickly that sometimes I break this rule, but the more on board I can get that person, the less I have to be the actual supervisor, do this thing because I told you to do this thing, which I think
Yeah.
sometimes is important. However, if that's all you're doing, then we're operating out of, like negative reinforcement. We don't want to get too jargony. We're operating out of, I'm doing this to get rid of this thing and keep Tim off my back,
Yeah.
which is not
I
where I
just
want to be.
want to stay out of trouble, get
Yep.
through the day, keep my head down so it doesn't get chopped off
Right.
like
For
that.
sure.
Yes.
Exactly right. So then when I moved into, positions more often where I was supervising
Well, hey,
directly more
can we
people.
talk
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
that? So you said that the more I realized that the more I could get people on board, the less I had to do what you would consider traditional hierarchical management, right? Where
Right.
like you're you're here to do what I tell you to do. So it's about leadership then is about actually building a bridge so that this person actually sees something, connects to something meaningful for themselves.
Right. Absolutely.
Um, Now, can you slow down a little bit
Sure.
and talk through because you said a lot there. And I want this to be useful for anyone listening where they can say, oh, cool, like I could do that with my line therapist, or I could do that with my executive team, or etc. So the steps I heard were uh, bring some awareness to how I'm seeing this meeting going into it. And now, is that something you're doing for yourself?
I do it for both because I mean, obviously everyone has anxiety as a default modality to some extent. And being able to place that in some area and articulate it, because I'm also engaging, similar to them, in some private events of why are they like this? Is it me? Is it because I'm doing a bad job? And you start formulating this information. So before I even go down that rabbit hole of what could or could not be true, I want to hear what's actually true from them. And then
Yes.
maybe we can even reciprocate what is true for me.
Awesome. Talk a little bit about how you evoke what's true for them.
Yeah.
And I
So,
really want to
yeah, yeah,
underline this before you say
yeah, yeah,
anything,
for sure.
because I think what you're saying is really powerful. It sounds like what you're doing is setting aside what you think or know or how you think things should be and starting with, well, okay, before we talk about this, how are things for you? And where are you starting from? Am I hearing that right?
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So talk about just like having those conversations and because I don't know, well, maybe you will say, well, I just read minds. That's learn to read minds.
So you guys can't do
But
that?
I suspect it's not that simple, right?
Call me now for your free reading. Yeah, for sure. No, it is that some of these things all need to be articulated. And some of this, I would say, because they're operating within themselves, they have their own private events. Your rapport kind of matters with them because that's going to indicate how safe they feel to disclose that without some type of consequence or something on the other side where maybe they feel like I'm going to combat that or argue, which isn't the goal. So this specific conversation, going back to the training program, which was like, again, years ago, but it was basically, what do you value within your position here? What do you want for the individuals? Obviously, fun. You brought that up. We want to have fun for sure. And then what does fun look like? And then, all right, cool. We lay those things out and be like, and then this is my perspective of what I also agree with you. We should have fun. But can that fun be honed in a manner where you could teach some skills that would get somebody more independent to access more fun? So we both have fun as our value for these individuals. Great. So then also, what is preventing us from reaching that? Or is there something that I've laid out or that you think wouldn't go with that value or wouldn't go with the procedures leading up to some type of skill acquisition? And I just lay it out there. And then I usually do ask, like, is there anything else? Like, I want to open it up, like, because if you start get somebody rolling and you don't want to, I try to avoid complaining, though I'm down with complaining. I'll usually ask, is this a time where you just want to vent and complain? In which case, I can hear it. I'm totally down. Or are we going to try to also solve the problem here? And those, I think those two things tend to be different, but I think they're both probably necessary. So then that allows that person to talk more about what things could look like. I start to pinpoint like, oh, I think we should do that too. And I realize like, oh, this isn't a you against me thing. This is a team thing. It's just that we're operating in maybe how those paths either intersect or might be parallel. And then I kind of go from there.
Cool. I want to share what I'm hearing, and then you can say, yeah, it's like that or not.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, and I'm gonna get metaphorical here. Uh, but I just as you're talking, I had this vision and how I saw things, like what you're doing, is less of a do this and then do this and then do this and then do this and then do this, and more of a general practice or practices. And one thing I'm really hearing is in the background is this way of that you bring to the table is, well, there's nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong. Um, okay, well, you see training as a drag. Okay. Not how I want you to see it. And there's nothing wrong with that way of seeing it. Thanks for letting me know that's the way you see it.
Yeah,
Right.
for sure.
Um, and then so that way of what, and there's a lot of ways you could communicate there's nothing wrong, but that sounds like it's in the background. And then that creates the space of, oh, well, I can actually now share and talk about how I see things. Or talk about how I see things, talk about what I want, talk about what I see is in the way of what I want. Like, I want to have fun, but frankly, like all these regulations you're throwing at me, leadership, or all these rig I don't know, red tape I have to go through to get something done around here, is in the way of fun. Um, and now, so you've gotten a place where people are willing to talk, and then you can start to see two things. One, what they really care about, and then also what they see is in the way of what they care about. And in kind of seeing the world as it looks to them, you're also, as you're doing that, keeping in mind, okay, well, this is what I care about. And as you start to see what they care about, you can see where those things intersect and then start to explore pathways there.
Yeah, exactly right.
Cool.
And it usually makes people feel less judgment because it's not necessarily about even right or wrong, which again is a relational frame of like, is this thinking right or wrong? It doesn't need to necessarily be that, because even though we both quote unquote want fun, right? You can get specific in those ideas, like, because you have to think that that person is coming from a background of why they entered that position as well. And maybe they're not exactly the same. You could say overarching, they want to help people. But I know a lot of people who also enter the field because there was somebody in their family or something like that. So they feel like they've had enough experience and they feel almost like a duty to do that. Where some people come from, like, I just want to help people. And those things aren't, there can be parallel, but not, they're not exactly the same, I don't think. So again, opening up that dialogue usually is helpful for them. And then you also start to see what's motivating them. And if you don't have motivation really, and there are people that just work jobs to pay their bills, which I totally get. Um, but in a lot of the field that we have, most people kind of enter again to help people. So you want to look at, again, those specifics that can help motivate that person to maybe get on board with something that they weren't originally, or even still maybe offer an idea that you didn't think about. And you're like, oh, you know what? That's actually a good idea. Maybe we'll do that instead.
Awesome. I love it. Um, I don't think I have any more questions about that. Anything else to say about that?
Yeah, for sure. So then I guess, I mean, moving along from there, like where I'm currently at, I was the first BCBA that they hired. So the gentleman that was already there, his background was in positive psychology. So again, I don't know, I'm operating mostly out of my own experience. By that time, I had learned very well how to work collaboratively with others. I worked at a school where your clinical team was made up of like a BCBA, a social worker, a music therapist, an OT, occupational therapist, and a speech therapist. And that was your team. And I love that experience because it trained you very quickly how to collaborate with people, which I know sometimes we get a bad rap for. It didn't really happen as much with me because I think I just like learning. So I want to be like, this is the problem. How do you in your field tackle this problem? How would you in your field tackle this problem? And then one, it hones your skills because at some point you're able to figure out the behavior analytic principles maybe within why that might work. But then also you're just learning how people operate in their new field. That way you can have the dialogue to, again, when you have to, if you have to supervise somebody like that, that you have the lingo and the information to provide, adequate supervision to that person. So when I came and I was hanging out with a guy, that one area I didn't know was positive psychology. I didn't know a lot about it. The guy trained me in some of that information, how he approached stuff. But I made it very quickly. I was like, dude, we're going to work together, collaborative. We had different caseloads, but I want to be like, well, how is this operating for him? And how is this operating from my perspective? How can I gain more information from him? That way, if I needed to kind of, you know, tiptoe in that field where somebody asked me a question about intervention or something like that, that was more from the positive psychology realm, I could explain that behavior analytically why we're doing that thing. So always, again, trying to work collaboratively. And then we had some behavior line staff is what they were called that we supervise. He was there for about a couple of years and then left, which made me then become the assistant director I am now. I mostly just supervise clinicians. We don't really have it as much behavioral line staff anymore, but going through theirs, I kind of use the same principles with clinicians. And again, you want to open the door, work together. What is the problem? And the big thing, again, coming from the BCBA background is, again, BCBA sometimes are kind of like, and they have to. If you look at somebody operating in a clinic, they have registered behavior technicians that they're supervising. You as a BCBA are responsible for that programming. Everyone's looking to you. You have to solve those problems. And I think when you do that, even successfully, after a while, you sometimes aren't open to listening to other people because you're so used to being the one that has to receive the question and has to have the answers. Um, so now I try to, again, similar way where I open up that dialogue for those clinicians to talk about the areas that are going well, and be also like, this thing is not going well, but not only not going well, I'm not going to be like, I'll figure it out, but tell it to the team that would be like, well, what have you tried? What haven't you tried? How can we assist you in maybe problem solving, thinking of new methods or whatnot? Because you're, your own critic and you're the only person that is devising intervention. Sometimes you just forget other manners to go about those things. So you want to be able to work more collaboratively as a team.
There's a theme that I'm seeing in this conversation, and that's a lot of listening. And I'm even if listening, like you're talking about learning positive psychology or collaborating on a team with a music therapist and an OT and a social worker, that uh, you have to learn to listen, or it works to learn to listen, uh, so that when it's your turn to speak, you can actually speak in a way that they'll hear.
Yeah, exactly.
And um, and then um, and then you pointed to that there's a tendency, and probably I bet this happens across fields. I don't really know. I can see it with behavior analysts because I work with a lot of behavior analysts. But yeah, we do get very focused on, sometimes annoyingly so,
Oh, right.
where uh I talk to people who are like brilliant, brilliant behavior analysts, and it's like they can't turn it off, you know, like in a party, like, oh, well, there's the SD, and like, okay,
Oh, yeah.
like, come on, snap
You're
out of it,
right.
right? Um, but so I'm curious if you have any insight into how to guard against falling into, oh, I'm falling into a pretty, like, I'm getting stuck in this band, when it would make a difference to be able to step outside of it and communicate from somewhere else.
Yeah.
And you may not know, but I'm curious if you have any insight into that.
I mean, the mindfulness aspect for sure. When I there's something that goes, and I can't say for sure what it is. I think it's the amount of words. Maybe I'm saying at some point it starts. If I'm talking too much, or I feel, what would be rambling. Like the last time this person has said a word was like a few minutes ago, and I'm still talking. That cues me like I need to ask a question or open this up for more information. I think
Yeah.
it's mostly just occurred over time where I'm just, mindfulness is probably overused these days, but mindfulness in that, like, as I'm talking and talking and talking, there's now a point where I click and I'm like, I think you might be saying too much. So either I say something like, does that make sense? Or what are you hearing now? Or what else possibly could we do in this situation? Obviously, depending on the situation. And I open it up to have that person talk more. But it definitely is, to me, a learned skill where previously, early on in your career, almost to the point of too much simplicity is like you feel like you could, like, again, logically write this out. First we do this, then we do this, then do this, and then we hit the goal. What? It's so easy. And you don't think of all the moving actual parts within that and how many humans are involved in that. So from there, I cue myself. All right, does this make sense? Does it usually what I say? Or I'll also say, was any of that helpful? And if so, how was it helpful for you? Because
Yeah, hey, I really
that's the
want to
thing. Yeah.
underline that because you've said a couple things, right? And there's a couple of them I want to underline. The thing you said was that you get to a point you realize, okay, I got to get them talking. And so I'll say something that will get them talking. And you asked a couple really great questions. One, like, okay, what are you hearing? Um, and then the other question you asked was, what else are you seeing? Or well, what do you think about how we could get there? Something like that, right?
Yeah.
You asked a question I didn't like. The question I didn't like was, does this make sense?
Yeah.
And I see people ask that
Yeah.
question, and I ask that same question, like, am I making sense? And like, people, especially if it's someone who, like, I'm the PhD and I'm supposed to be like, they don't want to look dumb. So they'll
Oh
say,
yeah.
right? So
I think my making sense means like are there some gross errors in what I said is usually where I'm coming from.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah. But
that
that's why I love the question, like, what are you hearing?
yeah.
Because that gives me a chance to be like, wow, I said that in a way that was just completely like
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
didn't pick up at all. Um and and so okay, so it's like get people talking so that uh I like that. I'm hearing this iterative process in leading people, developing people, creating buy-in, whatever it is, that always does come back to, okay, I've said some things, but now let's see how it's landing in their world. And
Right.
turn the table back to, all right, now what do you see? And
For sure.
really bringing an interest to um and I think towards answering my question, tell me if this fits for you. But a way to develop yourself in this direction is to really keep asking the question, do I know how they're seeing it? Like, do I
Yeah.
know how they're seeing it? And if like, oh, I just talked a lot. I have no idea how this is landing. Well, let's find out, right?
And you also quickly learn too, because sometimes you feel like you've articulated something that I guess, quote unquote, makes some type of algorithmic sense to them, whether that's a goal you're trying to reach or, something even with a client. And then they repeat that information back to you. And then you're like, that's not exactly what I meant. And then you realize, oh, the way that they're seeing this is not quite the way I'm seeing this. So then how do we actually connect to where what I'm articulating for this is identical in your whatever form that is?
Yes. Awesome.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah,
Really great. Thank you.
yeah,
We're getting close to the amount of time we set aside to chat.
for sure.
Let's turn the corner a little bit and talk about what's next and what you're up to now.
Always what's next. I mean, doing right by my clients is the main goal right there. I did write a book that I'll totally shamelessly plug, as I wrote a
Yeah,
book called
plug away.
Tiny Book, Big Change. It's on Amazon paperback, and then it also has what you would call it. We have an audio book of it. Probably won't get seen, but I'll send you a link or something like
Awesome.
that. That way you can hit it. So this book, again, because everyone talks about the dissemination, we need more dissemination of our science, and I maybe we do somewhat okay at that. But this is like just a self-help book, but it's rooted in that behavioral analytic approach. So it's kind of self-help, but I almost would recommend it for anybody who's like, how do I even frame this for the layperson, or if a parent is receiving services for the first time, doesn't quite understand what's going on, this is going to be an applicable version to what's occurring in the real world, rather than feeling like I take my kid to a clinic and they teach them some adaptive skills, how to raise their hands, how to talk or whatnot, but then how does this work for me as the parent? So that book kind of covers the actual real world approach for that. And
Awesome.
then continue consulting. So outside consulting, I do that more part time, working with different companies, usually both youth residential services and then adult, similar to what I'm currently doing here, but just helping companies again look at the motivation of their staff members, how to get them on board with behavior treatment plans, looking at the fidelity of those treatment plans, also kind of, the trauma informed care side of that. So on my website too, 7bx.org, the number 7, and then b and x.org. I do have like some CEUs and stuff like that, trauma informed care training as well. But I'm going to continue to do that. I've thought about, we'll see where that takes me along with my current career. I did like kind of writing a book just because it's so goal oriented. I've thought about writing more of a parenting side of the book now because I have 3 kids, looking at, self-reflection of what is actually effective as a parent and the things to like more so give yourself grace on. Like this is just how life happens, which is
Yeah.
really important.
Yeah.
um,
Sometimes your kids get pissed at you. This,
yeah.
yeah.
And I mean, being a parent has shown me too, it's changed me clinically a lot because I'm like, why are we actually, there's gonna be some rate of tantrums, there's gonna be some rate of being angry and upset and showing that. And I feel like, you don't quite realize
Yeah.
that
If
until
you
you have a
said,
kid.
I talked to a parent the other day who was like, oh yeah, like they drove cross country from Washington to Charleston, South Carolina, where I am now.
Hmm.
And and the complaint was, well, at the end of the day, behavior got kind of bad. I'm like, yeah, because your kid's 4
Yeah.
and been sitting in a chair for like 8 hours.
Right.
They're gonna be pissed.
Yeah, for
Like
sure.
it's, it's
100%.
it sounds like your kid works, you know?
Yeah, yeah, they're spot on.
Yeah.
Exactly right, for sure. And then also like I guess one hilarious too and anecdote was like how before kids, how easy it was me for it to tell a parent how to use like a star chart or a token economy. But then
Yeah.
running that in real life, you're like, dude, why was I asking them to do this? This is very difficult to do with all of your other life. It's like obviously they are effective, and maybe you look at the effective components and try to implement them. But it's like, of course, you're going to forget some days. Like, well, of course, this
Yeah.
isn't going to be totally effective. So it was hilarious that, like, why was I asking people and then being mad at them? Like, why aren't you run? Why aren't you running it? Come
Well, I
on,
don't care about their
it's
kid.
so
Yeah.
simple. Yeah, it's like the easiest thing ever. It's like, oh wait, they have 2 other kids and they both work full time. Like, what was I doing? But yeah, for sure. Again, I appreciate the time. Thank you for letting me come on.
Thank you for being on it. I really enjoyed the conversation, really
Likewise.
enjoyed exploring how some of these things work, how you do create buy-in. I love it when a theme emerges. So thank you, Tim, for being here.
Yeah, for sure.
And if you're watching, listening, of course, give us a like, give us a follow, press all the buttons. And this wraps up this episode. We will see you back here next episode of The Flex.